No discernible direction of advance except for a trail of wreckage and victims. Serbs dominate one village, Croats hold the neighboring one. The army is moving around fitfully but in strength. Refugees from Ilacha had found shelter in a yet unscathed Croat community 4 miles away. We prayed all night, for everyone. But as they filed out of mass this morning, warplanes tore overhead. The scale of the conflict has been difficult to estimate. Some reports insisted that the province of Bosnia had not so far been directly involved in fighting. The scene in Banja tells differently. Croatian communities being advanced on by the army. The fighting may be scattered, but it's nonetheless vicious for that. Kate 80, BBC News, Belgrade.
The boxer Michael Watson has had to have brain surgery for a second time since his defeat last night in the WBO title fight against Chris Eubank. After surgery, he was due to be returned to the life support machine in intensive care. His case has reopened the debate about whether boxing should be banned.
The second world title fight between Chris Eubank and Michael Watson was billed as a grudge match, and it produced a fierce contest with Watson initially forcing the pace. Eubank was finally knocked down in the 11th round, but got up to floor Watson seconds later. Then at the start of the 12th and final round, Eubank launched a furious attack and the fight was stopped. But as Eubank celebrated his victory, concern for Watson's health grew after the boxer collapsed in his corner. He was taken to St Bartholomew's Hospital in London, where he underwent an emergency operation to remove a blood clot from his brain.
His condition remained stable for 12 hours. He then deteriorated and is at present undergoing further surgery to his injured brain.
As friends and relatives of the boxer arrived at the hospital, the debate about the sport's safety began.
Everybody knows that boxing is a hard sport. You would not get no more harder sport in the world than boxing, but things like this do happen.
I think it's very difficult in the 1990s in a civilized country to accept a sport in which the principal objective is for one man to beat another senseless, or at least to make him so unfit to fight that he's unable to carry on.
Boxing's always looking at new safeguards. It costs hundreds of pounds to turn a young man professional today, just simply because of the medicals. We shall continue to look at new ways of bringing in safeguards, and I've no doubt at all that all avenues will continue as they have been all the time.
Tonight, Michael Watson's condition remains critical. He was due to return to a life support machine in the intensive care unit after his second operation of the day.
The government has been playing down the significance of a Mori poll in the Sunday Times, which suggests that Labour has a 4% lead. One cabinet minister said one individual poll didn't matter tuppence halfpenny. Labour said the country had run out of patience with the government.
When the Shadow Cabinet met last week, they were calling for an autumn election, even though most polls were showing a Conservative lead. Today's poll allows them to do it with more conviction.
Labour has been calling for a general election for many months. I don't think the Conservatives have the nerve to come to the people now. I don't think they have the confidence that they have either the policies or the appeal which can win them a general election.
Labour will be reiterating its commitment to the health service, an issue which the poll suggests is one of its strongest cards, at a news conference tomorrow. It will also underline its claim that the government would privatise the NHS.
I think it's rather helpful that Labour have gone so over the top on this, because it would have been cleverer, dirty politics for them to keep the suspicion alive. As soon as they bring it out in the open like that, it enables all of us to say there is no intention to privatise the health service.
After a successful conference, the Liberal Democrats had been hoping for a surge in support, but the 14% in today's poll suggests they haven't gained ground in the last 3 weeks. In spite of this, they said today that they'd never been more confident about their electoral prospects. It's the economy more than any other issue that will decide the outcome of the election. A CBI report out tomorrow will forecast an end to the decline in factory output over the next 4 months, confirming the Treasury view that an election should await further improvements in the economy. If other polls due out this week show a Labour lead, they'll kill off any remaining speculation about an autumn election. But the unofficial campaigning will continue. As one Labour source put it, we were calling for a November election when we were behind in the polls. We're not going to stop now.
3 people are reported dead and 40 injured in fighting in the Soviet Republic of Georgia. The clashes began last night in the capital, Tbilisi, between supporters and opponents of the president. He's believed to have had talks with opposition leaders. They are occupying the local TV station.
The violence comes at the end of a week of escalating tension in Georgia. In the centre of the capital, Tbilisi, there have been fierce clashes between demonstrators who support the controversial president, Zviad Gamsakhuria, and those who oppose him, Georgians who claim that he is ruling their republic like a dictator. Last night, one opponent of the government set himself on fire, and there are reports that 3 people have died this weekend, with some 40 injured. Government opponents wounded in the fighting say Mr. Gamsakhuria must now resign. But today the president's supporters have again been marching through Tbilisi. Their hero, though, is facing his strongest challenge since he was elected in May. Troops who were part of his National Guard have now switched allegiance and joined the opposition. This weekend, they've taken control of the television station in Tbilisi because they say that President Gamsakhuria had been trying to monopolize the media. It now appears that the president is being forced to compromise. He's met a representative of the opposition and apparently made some concessions. It's reported that Mr. Gamsakhuria will allow a debate on fresh parliamentary elections. But Georgia, which is still seeking international recognition of its declaration of independence, is more deeply divided than ever and on the brink of further bloodshed. Ben Brown, BBC News, Moscow.
The Russian President Boris Yeltsin is on a peace mission to try to settle the dispute over Nagorno-Karabakh. The enclave is a source of conflict between the republics of Armenia and neighbouring Azerbaijan. Mr. Yeltsin is now in the Armenian capital, Yerevan.
Russian President Boris Yeltsin and Kazakh President Nursultan Nazarbayev arrived in Armenia on the 3rd leg of a tour of Azerbaijan, Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia. The 2 leaders have volunteered to act as mediators in the dispute over the troubled region of Nagorno-Karabakh and to help find a negotiated settlement to a conflict that has cost hundreds of lives and created thousands of refugees. Following talks with the Armenian government, Mr. Yeltsin and Mr. Nazarbayev said that some points of agreement had emerged after their talks with the various sides, but the conference will be held on Monday in the North Caucasian town of Zhelyeznovodsk. The conference will be attended by delegations from Armenia, Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh, as well as by Mr. Yeltsin, Mr. Nazarbayev and the USSR Defense and Interior Ministers. If nothing else, the visit will have impressed on the Russian and Kazakh leaders the desperate desire of all sides in this conflict to end the fighting. Robert Parsons, BBC, Yerevan, Armenia.
Nigel Mansell's chances of winning the Formula One Drivers' World Championship have virtually disappeared. He was disqualified while leading the Portuguese Grand Prix. The race was won by his teammate Riccardo Patrese. Mansell's rival for the championship, Ayrton Senna, came second, extending his lead on the title to 24 points with only 3 races left. Laurie Margolis reports.
Nigel Mansell in the Williams Renault began the race badly needing the 10 points victory would earn him to eat into the championship lead established by Ayrton Senna. He swept past Senna into second place behind his teammate Riccardo Patrese and then took the lead after 19 laps. A comfortable victory looked likely. But a disastrous sequence of events began at what should have been a simple wheel change. Mansell drove off, the wheel came off, bringing Mansell's mechanics out of the official pit area to replace it. Action Mansell clearly realised might cause problems. He fought his way back to 6th place, but after several laps he was black flagged, disqualified for having technical assistance outside the pit area. He said nothing as he left the race, but even through the protective clothing his feelings were evident. The championship looks like Senna's.
And that's the BBC News Tonight. Good night.
Panorama on Monday investigates Robert Maxwell, one of the most influential men in Britain. His worldwide media empire includes the Daily Mirror and a string of publishing houses. Panorama examines Robert Maxwell, the media magnate, and reveals disturbing new evidence about the way Mr. Maxwell sometimes does business. That's The Max Factor, Monday night, 9:30.
A very good evening to you. We're going to have some wet and windy weather over the next few days as these weather fronts push their way in. Winds have already been pretty strong today, and through tonight you'll find them dying down just a shade, but then some pretty strong west to southwesterlies coming in from the west through tomorrow. I think particularly later in the day some of those are going to turn out to be quite strong, up to gale force, particularly in the north. Now this time tomorrow we'll have a deep low pressure area just off the northern part of Scotland, with gales or severe gales coming into many places, I think, tomorrow night. Same time, we've got some rain pushing its way in across Ireland now. By the end of the night, that will be into Wales, into central, southern parts of England, down into the southwest. And some of the rain, particularly over North Wales and Northern Ireland, could well be pretty heavy. But in the east, a dry and a fairly clear night. Quite a cold one too, down to 5 Celsius in the highlands of Scotland. That's 41 Fahrenheit. So then, tomorrow, a lot of wet and windy weather. That's going to push its way northeast, probably not getting to Shetland until well into the evening. And then as the rain pushes its way northeastwards in the afternoon, a drier and brighter weather coming in from the southwest. The brighter weather really East Wales, central and eastern parts of England, but still some drizzly rain around this western coast. Very warm, very humid down in the south, much colder in the north in that rain. Well, that's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
If you care what you watch and what you read, get the Radio Times. Perfect professionals, Torvill and Dean on life after Bolero. But is there life after breakfast? Philosophical questions and stuff from Alexei Sale. On Screen 1, it's Griff minus Mel plus passion equals trouble.
And Queenie's back. So Radio Times has got the lowdown on the girls, the gossip on making out.
The Radio Times is packed with all-channel information and is so easy to use that even with the busiest of lifestyles, you're sure to catch the best in TV and radio. The Radio Times, it's essential reading.
And now, in stereo, Claire Hackett and Con O'Neill star in tonight's Screen 1. Language which some people may find offensive is included in the television premiere of Willy Russell's highly acclaimed film about the riotous confusion between an eve of wedding hen night and stag night, Dancing Through the Dark.
And what was the name of the album?
Sign of the Times.
Sign of the Times, yeah.
Where are we?
Right, bonus point. Who played drums on the track?
Princess Di.
Oh, go back there, Slee.
Sheila E.
Sheila E, correct!
Do you know where we are?
Who was the guitarist sacked from Little Richard's band because he dressed too pretty?
Hendrix.
Right. Second part.
Does anyone know where we are?
What were Hendrix's last words to Little Richard on leaving the band?
So long, little dick. I think we're lost. Doing, I ask myself. A band on the verge of international stardom, and what are we doing? I can make you feel the sun still shining. So what you gonna do when the lights go down? What you gonna do when the wheels turn?
I'm Daddy's new friend, Christine.
Are you Mummy's friend too?
She looks much older in the flesh, doesn't she? No, I'm not trying to be nasty, really, I'm not.
She said Daddy's friend was covered in makeup, wore a skirt up to her bum, and looked like a tart.
I just want to know what this is all about.
What do you think it's about?
The Trials of Modern Living. X, Screen 1 next Sunday at 9:20 on BBC1.
This week, the self-appointed American black leader, Al Sharpton, who's at the centre of New York's racial conflict between black and Jewish communities, took his campaign to Israel to serve legal papers on a Hasidic Jew who accidentally killed a black child in a car crash. Tonight's Everyman now investigates the background to Sharpton and his high-profile publicity techniques.
Over the murder of 16-year-old black youth Yusuf Hawkins. Leading the march, controversial black activist, the Reverend Al Sharpton.